Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The brush glided smoothly across his eyelid, leaving a shimmering trail of violet eyeshadow in its wake. Alex's hand trembled slightly as he leaned in close to the mirror, carefully blending the edges to create a perfect smoky eye effect. His heart raced with a mixture of excitement and anxiety as he admired his handiwork. At 18 years old, Alex had been secretly experimenting with makeup and women's clothing for months now, always waiting until his parents were out of the house before raiding his mother's closet and cosmetics collection. There was something thrilling about the transformation, seeing his angular features softened by blush and lipstick, his lanky frame given curves by a padded bra and flowy dress. For a little while, he could escape the expectations placed on him as a boy and explore a different side of himself. Today, he was trying out a new look inspired by a tutorial he'd watched online. Dramatic purple eyeshadow paired with winged eyeliner, fluttery false lashes, and a deep plum lipstick. He'd already slipped on one of his mother's wrap dresses, a silky emerald number that clung to his slim hips. A long brunette wig cascaded over his shoulders in loose waves. Alex leaned back, tilting his head to examine his work from different angles. Not bad for an amateur, he thought, with a small smile of satisfaction. The makeup highlighted his high cheekbones and full lips. With the wig framing his face, he could almost pass for a girl. His moment of pride was shattered by the sudden slam of the front door downstairs. "Alex, you home?" Ice flooded his veins at the sound of his father's voice. They weren't supposed to be back for hours! Panic seized him as he heard footsteps on the stairs. "Oh my God!" Alex hissed under his breath, frantically looking around the bathroom for somewhere to hide. But it was too late. The door swung open before he could move. His father froze in the doorway, briefcase slipping from his fingers to thud on the floor. For several agonizing seconds, they just stared at each other in shocked silence. Alex's mind raced, desperately searching for some explanation, some way to talk his way out of this. But there was no denying the sight before his father's eyes, his teenage son dolled up in full makeup and women's clothing. "What the hell is this?" his father finally sputtered, face flushing red. "What are you? Are you wearing a dress?" I can explain," Alex stammered, voice cracking. But the words wouldn't come. How could he possibly make his father understand something he barely understood himself? "Take that ridiculous costume off right now," his father growled, advancing into the bathroom. "What is wrong with you? No son of mine is going to prance around in dresses like some kind of freak." The hateful words hit Alex like a physical blow. He flinched back, bumping into the counter. Bottles of nail polish clattered to the floor. I'm not. He tried to protest weakly, but his father wasn't listening. "I knew letting your mother coddle you was a mistake. All those art classes and dance lessons. I should have put my foot down years ago, made you play football or join scouts. Well, that changes now. No more of this perverted nonsense." Rough hands seized Alex's shoulders, shaking him. The wig slipped askew. In the mirror, Alex caught a glimpse of his reflection, makeup smeared by tears he hadn't realized were falling, wig crooked, dress rumpled. He barely recognized himself. "Please, Dad!" he choked out. "It's not what you think. I was just experimenting, trying to understand myself better." "Understand what? That you want to be a girl? Because let me tell you right now, son, that is never going to happen. Not in this family." The door creaked open wider as Alex's mother appeared, drawn by the commotion. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Alex, honey, what's going on?" "What's going on is that our son has lost his damn mind!" His father snapped. "Look at him, prancing around in your clothes like some kind of degenerate. This ends now!" Alex's mother moved closer, her brow furrowed with concern. "James, calm down. Let's all take a deep breath and talk about this rationally." "Rationally? There's nothing rational about a boy putting on a dress and makeup. He needs serious help." "Stop it!" Alex cried, wrenching away from his father's grip. "You don't understand. Neither of you do. I'm not crazy. I'm just different." His mother reached out, but he dodged her touch. Shoving past both of his stunned parents, Alex fled down the hallway to his bedroom, slamming the door behind him. He collapsed onto his bed, body racked with sobs. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just moments ago, he'd been admiring his reflection, feeling beautiful and free for the first time in his life. Now his deepest secret had been forcibly dragged into the light, twisted and warped by his father's rage and disgust. Alex curled into a ball, mascara-stained tears soaking into his pillow. He could hear his parents arguing in low, heated tones down the hall. Snatches of their conversation drifted through the walls. "Can't just ignore this. Overreacting. He's just a confused kid. Need to nip this in the bud before it gets worse." Their voices faded as they moved downstairs to continue their debate in private. Alex was left alone with the deafening silence of his room and the chaotic whirl of his thoughts. What would happen now? Would they send him to therapy? Take away his phone and computer? Ship him off to military school? The possibilities spun through his mind, each more terrifying than the last. He'd known, logically, that he couldn't keep his explorations a secret forever. But he'd foolishly hoped that when the time came to share this part of himself, his parents might react with understanding, or at least a willingness to listen. Now, that fantasy lay shattered at his feet. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Alex became acutely aware of the scratchy sensation of false eyelashes and the sticky weight of lipstick. Stumbling to his feet, he made his way to the small mirror hanging on his closet door. The face that gazed back at him was a mess. Eyeshadow smudged, lipstick smeared, tear tracks cutting through layers of foundation. The wig hung crookedly, revealing tufts of his natural sandy hair underneath. He looked like a cheap caricature, a clown's parody of femininity. With trembling hands, Alex began to remove the elaborate mask he'd so carefully constructed. He plucked off the false lashes, scrubbed away the eyeshadow and lipstick. As each element disappeared, he felt a piece of himself being stripped away as well. By the time he'd changed out of the dress and back into his usual t-shirt and jeans, Alex felt raw and exposed. The person staring back from the mirror was a stranger. Neither the confident, beautiful girl of his fantasies, nor the carefree boy he pretended to be for the rest of the world. Just a scared, confused teenager with no idea who he truly was or where he belonged. A soft knock at the door made him jump. "Alex?" His mother's voice was hesitant. "Can we talk?" For a moment, Alex considered ignoring her, pretending to be asleep, but he knew this conversation was inevitable. Might as well get it over with. "Come in!" he called, voice hoarse from crying. The door creaked open, and his mother slipped inside. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara slightly smudged. She'd clearly been crying, too. "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed, taking in his disheveled appearance. She moved to embrace him, but Alex stiffened, taking a step back. Hurt flashed across her face, but she respected his unspoken desire for space. "Where's Dad?" Alex asked warily. "He went for a drive to cool off," she replied. "I thought it would be better if we talked alone first." Alex nodded, sinking down onto the edge of his bed, his mother perched beside him, close but not touching. "How long has this been going on?" she asked gently. Alex shrugged, picking at a loose thread on his comforter. "A few months, I guess. But I felt different for a lot longer." "Why didn't you tell us?" He let out a bitter laugh. "You saw how Dad reacted. Can you blame me for being scared?" His mother winced. "Your father?" "He was shocked. He didn't handle it well, I know. But he loves you, Alex. We both do. No matter what. Even if I'm a freak." The words came out in a pained whisper. "You are not a freak," his mother said firmly. She reached out, tilting his chin up to meet her eyes. "You're our son, and we love you unconditionally. This doesn't change that." "But it does change things," Alex argued. "Dad wants to send me to therapy, doesn't he? To try to fix me?" His mother hesitated. We do think it might help for you to talk to someone, a professional who can help you sort through your feelings. But not to change you, Alex, just to support you as you figure things out." Alex mulled this over. The idea of therapy made him nervous. What if they really did try to cure him? But he had to admit the thought of having someone to confide in, someone who might actually understand, was appealing. "And the clothes? The makeup?" he asked cautiously. "Are you going to forbid me from ever touching that stuff again?" His mother sighed. "I think, for now, it might be best to take a little break from that, at least until we've all had a chance to process this and figure out how to move forward as a family. But we're not going to force you to be someone you're not, Alex. I promise." It wasn't the unconditional acceptance he'd dreamed of, but it was better than he'd feared. Alex felt some of the tension leave his body. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I never meant to hurt you or Dad. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't fit in anywhere." "Oh, sweetheart." This time, when his mother reached for him, Alex didn't pull away. He let himself be enveloped in her embrace, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. You're young. You're still figuring yourself out. And that's okay. We'll get through this together." Alex nodded against her shoulder, letting the tears flow freely now. All the fear and shame and confusion of the past months came pouring out. His mother held him, stroking his hair and murmuring soothing words. Eventually, his sobs quieted. He pulled back, wiping his eyes on his sleeve. "What happens now?" he asked, voice small. "Well, first I think we all need to get some rest. It's been a long, emotional day. Tomorrow we'll sit down as a family and talk things through calmly. Your father included." Alex tensed at the mention of his dad. What if he still thinks I'm disgusting? That I need to be fixed? He doesn't think that, Alex. He's confused and scared, just like you are. But he loves you. Give him a chance to come around. Alex wasn't entirely convinced, but he nodded. What other choice did he have? Try to get some sleep, okay? His mother pressed a kiss to his forehead. Things will look brighter in the morning. As she turned to leave, Alex called out, "Mom, thank you for not hating me." She paused in the doorway, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I could never hate you, Alex. You're my child. Nothing will ever change that." With a final sad smile, she slipped out, closing the door softly behind her. Alex flopped back onto his bed, emotionally and physically drained. His mind was still whirling, trying to process everything that had happened. But exhaustion soon pulled him under into a fitful sleep. He woke the next morning to gray light filtering through his curtains. For a blissful moment, everything seemed normal. Then, the events of the previous day came rushing back. Alex groaned, pulling his pillow over his face. Part of him wanted to just stay in bed forever, hiding from reality. But he knew he couldn't avoid this forever. Reluctantly, he dragged himself out of bed and got dressed in his most masculine clothes, baggy jeans and a plain t-shirt. No hint of the femininity he'd explored in secret. Taking a deep breath, he made his way downstairs. He could hear low voices from the kitchen, his parents, already awake and talking. Alex hesitated in the hallway, straining to make out their words. "Can't just pretend this didn't happen," his father was saying. "He needs help, Sarah." "I agree, but not the kind of help you're thinking of," his mother replied. "We need to support him, not try to change him." Support him how? By letting him prance around in dresses? That's not support, it's enabling a delusion. Alex's stomach clenched. So much for his mother's assurances that his father would come around. "James, please, try to keep an open mind. This is still our son we're talking about." "Is it? Sometimes I feel like I don't even know who he is anymore." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. Tears pricked at his eyes. He was about to turn and flee back upstairs when his mother's voice stopped him. "Alex? Is that you, honey? Come join us for breakfast." Taking a shaky breath, Alex stepped into the kitchen. His parents fell silent, both turning to look at him. His father's face was unreadable, a mask of careful neutrality. His mother offered a strained smile. "Good morning, sweetheart. I made pancakes. Your favorite." Alex nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He slid into his usual chair, acutely aware of his father's gaze boring into him. An uncomfortable silence fell as his mother bustled around, setting plates on the table. Alex poked at his food, appetite non-existent. Finally, his father cleared his throat. "Son, your mother and I have been talking. We think it would be good for you to talk to someone. A therapist." Alex's head snapped up. "You mean someone to try to fix me, to make me normal?" "That's not—" his mother began, but his father cut her off. "What's wrong with wanting you to be normal?" he demanded. This phase you're going through. It's not healthy, Alex. You're confused and we want to help you." "I'm not confused," Alex shouted, slamming his hands on the table. Dishes rattled. "This is who I am. Why can't you accept that?" "Because it's not who you are," his father yelled back. "You're my son, damn it, not some drag queen." "James," his mother's sharp rebuke cut through the air. "That's enough. We agreed to discuss this calmly." His father subsided, jaw clenched. Alex slumped in his chair, fighting back tears. "Alex, honey," his mother said gently. "We're not trying to change you. We just want to make sure you have someone to talk to who can help you sort through your feelings." "Someone unbiased, outside the family." "And if I don't want to go?" Alex asked sullenly. His parents exchanged a look. "Well," his mother said carefully, "we think it's for the best. We'd like you to at least give it a try." Alex recognized the steel beneath her soft tone. This wasn't really a request. "Fine," he muttered. "Whatever. There's something else," his father added gruffly. Alex tensed, bracing himself. "We've decided your mother and I are going to go through your room. Any inappropriate items will be removed." "What? You can't do that!" Alex cried. "That's my private stuff." "Our house, our rules," his father said firmly. "This cross-dressing nonsense stops now. It's not nonsense. It's part of who I am. No, it's not. It's a phase, a sick fantasy. And we're putting an end to it before it gets worse." Alex looked to his mother, silently pleading for support. But she just gave a sad shake of her head. "I'm sorry, Alex, but we think this is for the best.
just until we can get you the help you need."
Betrayal and hurt crashed over him in a suffocating wave. Without another word, Alex shoved back from the table and stormed out of the kitchen. He thundered up the stairs, ignoring his parents' calls. Slamming his bedroom door, Alex leaned against it, breathing heavily. His mind raced, trying to process everything that had just happened. They were going to take away his clothes, his makeup, the only things that made him feel truly like himself, and force him into therapy with someone who might try to fix him. He couldn't let that happen. He wouldn't. With shaking hands, Alex dragged his duffel bag out from under the bed. He had to act fast before his parents came up to start their purge. Frantically, he began shoving clothes into the bag, both his everyday wear and the feminine items he'd carefully collected over the months. Makeup and accessories followed, along with his laptop and phone charger. As he worked, his eyes fell on the framed family photo on his nightstand. It had been taken just last year on vacation. All three of them smiling, arms around each other. A perfect, happy family. Alex's throat tightened. Would things ever be that simple again? With a pang, he realized he couldn't take the photo with him. It would be too painful a reminder of what he was leaving behind. Instead, he grabbed his wallet and the emergency cash he kept stashed in his sock drawer. Just as he was zipping up the bulging duffel bag, a knock came at the door. "Alex?" His mother's voice. "Can we please talk about this?" Alex froze, heart pounding. I need some time alone," he called, trying to keep his voice steady. "Please." A pause, then,
"All right, sweetheart, take all the time you need. We'll be downstairs when you're ready."
He waited, barely breathing, until he heard her footsteps retreat down the hall. Then he sprang into action. Slinging the duffel bag over his shoulder, Alex eased open his bedroom window. The old oak tree that had been his childhood climbing spot stretched its branches invitingly close to the house. He'd snuck out this way countless times before for innocent teenage adventures. Never imagined he'd be using it for something like this. With practiced ease, Alex shimmied out the window and onto the nearest branch. The bark was rough against his palms as he carefully made his way down the tree. His heavy bag made balancing tricky, but adrenaline kept him moving. Feet touching grass, Alex paused for a moment, looking back at the only home he'd ever known. Guilt and fear warred in his chest. Was he really doing this? Running away from his family, his whole life? But the memory of his father's disgusted face, his mother's sad resignation, steeled his resolve. They couldn't accept him as he was, and he couldn't live a lie anymore. Taking a deep breath, Alex turned and ran. He stuck to back alleys and side streets, paranoid that at any moment he'd hear his parents calling his name or see their car rounding the corner. But he made it to the bus station without incident. Breathless, he approached the ticket counter. "One-way ticket to Chicago, please," he said, sliding over a handful of crumpled bills. It was the farthest his meager savings could take him. The bored-looking clerk barely glanced at him as she processed the transaction. If she thought anything was odd about a teenager buying a long-distance ticket alone, she didn't show it. "Bus leaves in 20 minutes, she drawled, handing over the ticket. "Platform 3. Alex mumbled his thanks and hurried to find the right platform. As he settled into a hard plastic seat to wait, the reality of what he was doing began to sink in. He was about to leave behind everything he'd ever known. His home, his school, his few friends. He had no real plan beyond get to Chicago. What would he do once he got there? Where would he stay? How would he survive? Panic started to claw at his throat. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he should just go home, face whatever punishment his parents decided on. At least he'd have a roof over his head and food to eat. But then he imagined going back to living a lie, pretending to be someone he wasn't, day after day. The thought was suffocating. No, he had to do this. Had to find a place where he could be himself without shame or fear. It would be hard, terrifying even. But it was better than the alternative. The hiss of air brakes announced the arrival of the bus. Alex stood, clutching his bag close. This was it, his last chance to change his mind. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The bus ride was long and uncomfortable. Alex spent most of it curled up against the window, watching the familiar landscape of his hometown give way to unfamiliar territory. His phone buzzed periodically with increasingly frantic texts and calls from his parents, which he ignored. Eventually, he turned the device off entirely, unable to bear the guilt they stirred up. As the hours ticked by, exhaustion finally overcame his anxiety. Alex drifted into a fitful sleep, lulled by the rumble of the engine and the gentle swaying of the bus. He woke with a start as the driver announced their arrival in Chicago. Disoriented, it took him a moment to remember where he was and why. Then, reality came crashing back. Stumbling off the bus on stiff legs, Alex found himself standing on a busy city street. The cacophony of traffic and the press of hurrying pedestrians overwhelmed his senses after the quiet of the bus. Towering skyscrapers stretched towards the sky, making him feel impossibly small. For a moment, he stood frozen, paralyzed by indecision. Now what? He had no idea where to go or what to do next. A gruff voice startled him out of his daze.
You gonna stand there all day, kid? Some of us got places to be.
Alex mumbled an apology and moved out of the way, cheeks burning with embarrassment. He needed to pull himself together, find somewhere to regroup and figure out his next move. Spotting a small coffee shop across the street, Alex made his way over. The warm aroma of coffee and pastries washed over him as he stepped inside. His stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since storming out of breakfast that morning. Counting out his remaining cash, Alex ordered the cheapest item on the menu, a plain black coffee, and claimed a small table in the corner. He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the power button. Part of him was desperate to turn it on, to see if his parents had left any messages. But he knew if he did, he'd be tempted to call them, to beg them to come get him and take him home. With a sigh, he shoved the phone back in his pocket. Instead, he pulled out his laptop and connected to the cafe's free Wi-Fi. Time to start figuring out how to survive in this strange new city. The next few hours were a blur of frantic research. Alex scoured websites for youth shelters, job listings, and any other resources that might help him. The more he read, the more overwhelmed he felt. Everything seemed to require things he didn't have: an address, a guardian's signature, work experience. As the afternoon wore on, the reality of his situation began to sink in. He had limited funds, no place to stay, and no real skills to offer potential employers. What had he been thinking, running away like this with no plan? The barista's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. "We're closing up in 5 minutes, hun." Alex looked up, startled to realize how much time had passed. Through the cafe windows, he could see the sky had darkened to a deep indigo. Panic gripped him. Where was he going to go? Packing up his things with shaking hands, Alex stepped out onto the now quiet street. The bustle of daytime Chicago had given way to a different energy, one that felt more dangerous, especially to a lost and alone teenager. He wandered aimlessly for a while, too afraid to stay in one place for long, but with no real destination in mind. Every shadow made him jump, every passing stranger a potential threat. Eventually, exhaustion began to overtake fear. Alex found himself in a small park, deserted at this late hour. Collapsing onto a bench, he curled around his duffel bag and closed his eyes. He was so tired. Maybe if he just rested for a moment. A rough hand on his shoulder jolted Alex awake. He blinked up at the looming figure of a police officer.
Can't sleep here, kid,
The officer said gruffly.
Park's closed after dark. Move along.
Heart pounding, Alex scrambled to his feet.
Sorry, officer. I didn't realize...
The cop's eyes narrowed suspiciously.
You got somewhere to go? You look awful young to be out this late.
Yes, of course, Alex lied, willing his voice not to shake.
I just lost track of time. I'll head home now.
The officer didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded.
All right then. Be careful out there.
Alex hurried away, not daring to look back. Once he was a few blocks away, he slowed his pace, trying to catch his breath. That had been close. Too close. He couldn't keep wandering the streets all night. He needed to find somewhere safe to stay, at least until morning. After another hour of searching, Alex finally stumbled upon a 24-hour diner. The fluorescent lights and greasy smell weren't exactly welcoming, but it was warm and dry. And, most importantly, no one seemed to care that he was there. Claiming a booth in the back corner, Alex ordered a cup of coffee he couldn't really afford, but it bought him the right to stay, at least for a while. As he nursed the bitter drink, Alex's mind wandered back to his parents. Were they worried sick, searching the streets for him? Or were they angry, feeling betrayed by his sudden departure? He imagined his mother crying, his father pacing furiously. Guilt gnawed at him. Maybe he should call them, just to let them know he was safe. They deserved that much, didn't they? Before he could talk himself out of it, Alex pulled out his phone and turned it on. Immediately, it exploded with notifications. Dozens of missed calls and texts, not just from his parents, but from other family members and friends too. Hands shaking, he opened the most recent voicemail from his mother. "Alex, please." Her voice cracked with emotion. "We're so worried about you. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, we can work it out together. Just come home. Please, sweetheart. We love you." Tears streamed down Alex's face as the message ended. He'd been so focused on escaping, on finding a place where he could be himself, that he hadn't fully considered the pain he was causing those who loved him. But could he really go back? Face his father's disappointment, his mother's sad attempts at understanding. Go back to hiding who he really was. The waitress's voice startled him out of his thoughts. "You okay, honey? You look like you're having a rough night." Alex hastily wiped his eyes. "I'm fine," he mumbled. "Just trying to figure some things out." She gave him a sympathetic smile. "We all have nights like that sometimes. You want a refill on that coffee?" He shook his head. "Thanks, but I should probably get going." "All right then. You take care of yourself out there." As she walked away, Alex made a decision. He couldn't keep running, couldn't keep hiding. He had to face this head-on, whatever the consequences. Taking a deep breath, he dialed his mother's number. She answered on the first ring. "Alex? Oh, thank God! Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm okay, Mom," he said softly. I'm in Chicago." "Chicago?" she gasped. "Alex, what were you thinking? Your father and I have been worried sick." "I know! I'm sorry! I felt like I had no other choice." His mother's voice softened. "Oh, sweetheart, there's always another choice. Whatever is going on, we can work through it together. As a family." Alex swallowed hard.
Even if it means accepting me as I am? All of me?"
There was a long pause. Then,
"Yes, Alex. Even then, It might take some time for all of us to adjust, but we love you. Nothing will ever change that."
Tears flowed freely now.
"I want to come home."
Alex whispered.
"Then come home,"
his mother said firmly.
"We'll figure this out together, I promise. Your father and I will leave right now to come get you."
As Alex gave her the address of the diner, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He didn't know what the future held, how his family would navigate this new reality. But at least he wouldn't be facing it alone. Hours later, as dawn broke over the Chicago skyline, Alex spotted his parents' car pulling into the diner parking lot. His heart raced as they hurried inside, scanning the booths until they saw him. For a moment, they all just stared at each other. Then his mother rushed forward, enveloping him in a fierce hug. His father followed more slowly, uncertainty written across his face. But when he reached them, he wrapped his arms around them both. "I'm sorry," Alex choked out. "I'm so sorry." "Shh," his mother soothed. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." As they broke apart, Alex saw tears in his father's eyes.
"Son, I said some things I regret. I was scared and confused, but that's no excuse. I love you, no matter what. We'll figure this out together." Alex nodded, not trusting himself to speak. It wasn't a magic solution to all their problems. There would still be difficult conversations and adjustments ahead. But it was a start. As they walked out of the diner into the bright morning light, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. For the first time in a long time, he could see a future where he could be truly, authentically himself, and still have the love and support of his family. It wouldn't be an easy road, but at least now, he wouldn't have to walk it alone.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!